the woodshed. We're going yet again into inaccuracies being promoted by a certain person we all know. Last night, Katie Joy started talking yet again about the most crazy Quiverfull thing, To Train Up a Child by Michael Pearl and the implement that he recommends when you're doing blanket training. And Jim, you just rolled over and I can see you taking your little nap. Okay. So, in the time that Katie has covered Quiverfull, we've seen her say that implement for blanket training is a metal rod, a metal pipe, and now she's claiming, what was it? She was claiming last night that it's a glue stick. Oh no, au contraire, my frere, that's not at all what it is. If you were to actually break down and read Michael Pearl's To Train Up a Child book, read the book and see all the stuff that's recommended in it, you would see that Michael Pearl recommends a 1/4 inch plastic plumbing line. In a pinch, you're allowed to use a wooden spoon or a switch that you get from the tree, a little small switch, he said, no bigger than your pinky. And he's recommending this for a 6-month-old child, that you blanket train to stay on the blanket as a means to train them to behave themselves. I'm not a fan of that model. I think that model is abusive and it does a lot of damage. So Katie said last night glue sticks were to be used. Let's look at that for just a half a second. That is not right. Nowhere does it say glue sticks. Here is where she got glue sticks from. Glue sticks are what Gwen Shamblin recommends. I don't know if you know who Gwen Shamblin is. I recommend you Google her. Google is your friend, as our friend likes to say. Gwen Shamblin. I'm going to put links to her below. Gwen Shamblin. And I'm going to put links to Michael Pearl too, so you can see what it is he actually says. Gwen Shamblin. I first became acquainted with Gwen Shamblin in the late 90s through the Way Down workshop through our church. Gwen lost her damn mind, I think. I'm not sure. It's my opinion, and left her husband of many years, abandoned her children, started her own church, married some hot guy, and came up with a bunch of rules. She doesn't believe in the Trinity anymore, she stated. If you don't go to her church, the remnant, then you're damned for all time. She's got crazy hair that's a hot mess and a crazy hot young husband. Hey, JJ, yeah, I'm talking about without a Kleenex, without a box of Kleenex and all the stuff she gets wrong about Quiverfull this morning. You caught alive again, Krabby Girl. Yes, you caught alive. I'm talking about all the mistakes that our friend makes every time she talks about Quiverfull. Right now, she's talking about Michael Pearl's To Train Up a Child in blanket training, and she's claiming that you use glue sticks. I'm explaining that Gwen Shamblin is the only one I know of that recommends glue sticks, and Gwen Shamblin is a hot mess. Like I said, I'm going to include links below so you can see the hot mess I'm talking about and the controversy. I've written about Gwen Shamblin a few times with Quiverfull because she started from a very nice lady that was running a very helpful, actually, weight loss program that was actually about focusing your mind on God instead of food. I lost a ton of weight on it. Hey, JC, all is well. The tissue lady is just saying things that are not even remotely true. So I've decided from now on, every time she does that, I'm going to do this. I did one last night, a quick one. This one may be longer because it's more serious. I've noticed that YouTube has decided to make a lot of my videos unmonetized. And I think it's because I'm talking about Quiverfull. I'm talking about the hard stuff. I'm also going to do some Costa Rica ones because like yesterday, I went out with my husband to pick up his motorcycle and had one of those wonderful encounters where you run into some guy selling something on the street and you buy it. and it's good food. You can buy awesome food here straight off of people's vehicles, and it's the most wonderful thing on the planet and cheap. Hey, DF, thanks. I don't know if it's good or not because she has apparently had some nice, nasty as usual things to say about that. It's just for me, I wrote about this for over 10 years. So when I hear her say that you use glue sticks, I'm just taken aback. It's like, where are you getting your information? Yesterday, she said that Sierra Joe Dominguez was Jim Holt's daughter, which is not even remotely true. Jim Holt is a former Duggar friend that gave Josh a job working on his campaign and paid the price. Rumor is that Josh downloaded porn on the campaign computers and Jim Holt went nuts. And that ended the Duggar friendship. I don't understand how any of her videos are monetized. And JC, yeah, she is definitely getting the information from her behind. She's making up stuff she doesn't know. Hey, Jamie, for the life of me, I can't understand why she would do that. Why not just say, I don't know, but I will Google that? Which is funny because she loves to tell people to Google stuff, yet she won't do it herself. Yet she then turns around and claims she's a journalist. Here's the thing about journalism and journalists. You really should be taking an ethics class or two to see what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Take a look at your own morality, see where you are in this. It is very, very easy to make up this stuff if you really wanted to. I've always joked, and I've told her this, that my job, my fantasy job, I've had 2 jobs that I said were fantasy that I would, if you were going to twist my arm and say, pick the perfect job for you, I have 2 of them. Number 1, I've always said I want to be a vocal coach on American Idol because I see so many horrible singing habits these people come in with that will really do you wrong. But mostly I said I wanted to work for Weekly World News. I wanted to work for the Weekly World News tabloid so that I could just make stuff up, making stuff up again, Arnold. So I could make up all those crazy stories about aliens endorse Clinton or Bat Boy, the crazy stuff they have. Nobody expects the Weekly World News to be accurate. They just expect them to be bizarre and sometimes bizarrely funny. Journalists are supposed to be unbiased about what they're reporting, but the thing is, I just have to say this. Journalism has changed a lot in the last, especially 10 years with the internet. It's changed a lot. A lot of people that once wrote unbiased pieces are now writing for places that have their own agenda they want you to push aside. I mean, just look at some of the mainstream media like MSNBC and Fox News. They have an agenda. Now, whether that's good or bad, you can debate that, but they all have an agenda. They all have some idea they're pushing. I love to look at both of them and others when there's something going on to see who's covering what and how. And think the reality probably is somewhere between those 2 polar opposites. So it's a job that's changed a lot, and you can't just call yourself that. I'm sure she's in there on socks in the Duggar Reddit. I'm sure. JJ said, for someone who doesn't get her info from Reddit's Duggar snark, she sure does mention how they can't stand her. She has to be there on socks. I am sure she is on there on socks. Atticus Finch, I didn't say hello when you came in. I don't doubt that one bit. But here's the thing. They're way more accurate than she is. I've seen them talk about all kinds of things and occasionally get it wrong. I'm on there too, and I'm not under my usual name. I'm not hiding under a sock, but here's what I've found. I've found before if I go into some of these places under my real name, I get either attacked or I get blown off as, oh, you're just another person trying to get info. When sometimes, most of the time, say 99.99% of the time, I am just in there discussing the subject because I find it interesting. Now, Captain Cassidy over at Pathos, where I used to work, had an interesting piece about the Duggars. He's got one about Jim Bob Duggar and branding. And I have to totally agree with him on that. Jim Bob is worried about his brand. That's how it is with Jim Bob. This impacts Jim Bob's brand. He's going to go after it hard. He's going to pretend. A good example of that would be when Josh's business was raided back in November 2019. And Jim Bob said that it hadn't occurred, that the police, law enforcement had not been anywhere near the compound. It was a damn lie. Nobody was raiding anything. And then Homeland Security came out and said, yes, we did raid. Yes, we're involved in an investigation out there. And just blew that out of the water. Yeah, JJ, sometimes it used to not be that way. It used to be journalism got to the heart of the story and looked at it. I'm going to compliment Washington Post. I know a lot of people don't like Washington Post, but let me tell you something about Washington Post. They do still have real journalists there. There's sometimes where you can see the entire scope of what's going on, the good, bad, and the ugly. Some of the writers there still do journalism. I was interested in seeing the movie Spotlight. It was a horribly hard movie to watch because it was about CP in the Catholic Church, and Boston police covered it up. The Boston Archdiocese covered it up, but the reporters of the Boston Globe, I'm getting freaking cold. I gotta turn this off. Found it. They found out and dug and did a truly journalistic good for everybody by exposing that stuff. It is horrible what's happening in this world, Krabby. That's not good, JJ. I just saw a comment made by JJ talking about how the middle school wanted to censor what his daughter was saying in a paper. That's never good. That's never appropriate unless you're spewing curse words, and I can't imagine that in a middle school paper at all. I don't see what the problem is. Unless you're espousing some kind of hate, I don't see that either. The school superintendent agreed with my husband and I. Yes, JJ, that's good. That's horrible. What's happening in this world? That's what Krabby Girl is saying. It's good to hear. Yes, Aaron, I could just imagine that was a pretty horrible thing. Here's the thing, all of this, here's the thing for me I keep going back to. I wrote about this stuff for 10 years. None of this horrible stuff is appropriate for gossip like she's been doing. Trauma will never be tea. And she said something yesterday about vicarious trauma. I don't think that's actually a thing. She can call vicarious trauma, but what I see is it's kind of like vampires, emotional vampires that don't experience anything remotely like this. This is the closest they'll ever come to any kind of tragedy. So they glom onto it, sometimes inserting themselves. Those people are not vicariously traumatized. Those people are emotional vampires. And they're getting some kind of charge out of the trauma of other people, and that is just never right. And there's always been some sort of that. I mean, even in the journalistic world, let's look at the yellow journalism going back many years, even going back to like Victorian times and beyond that, when the headlines would scream all kinds of things. And there would be things that would happen. There would be horrible articles. Exists in psychotherapy world in the medical field, but not among gossips. Oh, vicarious trauma. I'm going to have to research it because I had not heard the term until yesterday. But then again, my work world was not involved with that. So I don't know. It just sounds like something that she pulled out of her rear end again, like stringing words together, like military intelligence. What would you call that? So she just does not understand any of this. She thinks she does. It's sick that she enjoys it. You are exactly right, Michelle. You can tell by the way she covers it that she's breathless and gleeful about it. She gets a charge. That's why as soon as I saw that Josh had been arrested, I put up, I said, she's having a spontaneous orgasm right now because she really does enjoy covering CP. I'm really not sure why anybody would enjoy covering that kind of thing. When I heard the details of what Josh had done, I was physically sick for days, and just feeling like I was going to throw up at any moment. Like I had a hard knot right here in my stomach, and anything that I ate was going to come up. I didn't even want to eat. So no, I don't understand wanting to know all the dirty details and then being all gleeful over it. I think that's pretty disgusting. I think that's what she does. I'd like to see her shut down. I don't know how she is monetized on YouTube because she does say so many horrible things. I guess that's why she's moved over to um, Instagram for all of her live rants. That would be my guess. Is their live rants aren't monetized there? Maybe they're monetized over at Instagram. I'm not really sure. The look on her face. On Instagram, yes, I know that's what she does. I saw a little bit, yes, I saw a little while ago about her going after tarot card readers and psychics and that sort of thing. While some of those people are invariably fake, I'm not willing to say that all of them are. Why? Because I've always been one of those people where I have my own inner voice, and if I ignore the inner voice, I get real screwed up. If I listen to it, I usually come out perfectly fine. And that's not always the easiest thing to do because sometimes the inner voice is telling me to do something that is completely contrary to the evidence I'm seeing in front of me. Crabby Girl, it's not called vicarious, though. It's a different term, of course, and it has to do with taking on others' emotions or being directly involved in the trauma of others day after day. Yeah, I don't think that's called vicarious trauma. Um, it's like we had somebody that I know that yesterday finally started talking about their job. They do a lot of investigation of CP incidents and had been involved with investigating the guy that had filmed Daisy's destruction. And that's a kind of psychic trauma that can really do you in day after day, looking at that stuff. Every time you turn around, you're being traumatized. It's why so many people burn out of fields like police work, social work, um, being a physician on the front lines. It's very hard to overcome those things. And sometimes you do need to take a break. Prairie Bullabusta. KJ needs to stop harming survivors of actual trauma. I will agree with that. When she says and does everything she's doing, she's harming actual survivors. She's making it hard for anybody who has lived through something like that to get help and be taken seriously when you're using it as some type of way to make money. And KJ is harming actual people who actually have been harmed. Yep, exactly. She is creating a difficult atmosphere that makes it much harder to get treatment, much harder to be taken seriously. When you reduce the trauma of others to gossip fodder, you just make it hard for everybody, particularly the victims. So that's really my rant about her and about this whole thing with glue sticks and her saying that metal pipes and all that. She just hasn't read the book. She's never read the book. She's talking about something that she only has the slightest knowledge of. It's like somebody who's only read Cliff Notes about books, except the Cliff Notes is accurate. You're going to miss all the subtleties. That's one reason why I enjoy doing things like going on Do Good's channel and discussing Handmaid's Tale, because I don't get all the subtleties the first time around. I sometimes have to watch something twice, three times to get everything that's going on. And the same thing with doing book reviews. Book reviews really forces me to take a deeper look. That's something I haven't done since I left NLQ, and I probably will start again, because there are a lot of really good authors I've discovered just by looking at Kindle freebies, the free books through Kindle Unlimited that I've discovered that I would normally never picked up. There are a lot of good ones. There are a lot of bad ones. Michelle's saying, yes, Perry, she doesn't understand that there are survivors and there are a lot in the audience. There are. I would say in her audience, there are a lot of people that have survived any number of horrible things. And there are a lot of people I've noticed that seem to have mental health issues. So I'm not saying that to judge them or be horrible. They just seem to have admitted mental health issues. And I'm not sure how she's picking up this audience of traumatized people and people with the mental health issues that aren't maybe getting the right treatment that they need. But it's tragic because she's harming both by the things that she's saying. And they don't even seem to realize, many of them, that they're being re-victimized and belittled, and it's going to be harder for them to recover by the things that she says. JC says, I still don't understand if she's for real and believes the things she says, or she being a complete troll. She's either really dumb or really clever, and not in a good way. I can speak to that. She's real. I'm going to tell you that from knowing her, from Pathos and working with her at Pathos. She is for real. But unlike myself and others, her God is money. Her God is money. It was always her intention to be able to stay home, to not go outside the house, and to make the most money. That is what her YouTube channel is about. That's exactly what her Pathos column was about. I think she was vastly disappointed when she came to Pathos because she thought it was going to be a lot of money. The problem is, when BN Media bought out Pathos, it quit being a lot of money and started being My Yarn Fun. That's really what it turned into. And she just kept ramping up the outrage. She went from talking about the issues of caring for a chronically ill child without religion to jumping to the most sensationalized BS on the planet in an attempt to get as many eyeballs on the page as possible, not understanding that the way the pay scale had been run there now, that getting megabucks was going to be difficult at best. Once she discovered YouTube and discovered it was a lot easier to fire up her outrage machine and make money. She's told me before that her first month on YouTube, she made $10,000. I don't know how real that is and how much BS that is. The last time I spoke to her, which would have been about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago to the day that we had her fall out, she claimed to be making $25,000 a month merely off YouTube, off super chats, off memberships, and off of just the click and pay, just the pay scale. She was claiming that. And I thought then she was full of it. And I still think it. I think she's making something. I don't think it's $25,000 a month, or she wouldn't have been freaking out so badly when Tati sued her. She'd have had the money for an attorney, and it would not have been freaking out. JC, I do too. I love learning deeper meaning and symbolism and motifs. And yes, you're talking about Janine being June's doppelganger on Handmaid's Tale. I hadn't thought about that until you brought it up. But now that you brought it up, I actually went back and rewatched the episode to see what was going on. And it does seem like Janine and June are two opposite sides of the coin. They may be the same person. I'm just one of those. You hear her mocking? Atticus Finch says, did y'all hear her mocking the person who sent her a 13-page DM? Yes, I heard her saying that. And you just don't mock people. And I think hurting people reach out to her thinking since she seems to be all together, she has the answer for them. The problem is she's never experienced real trauma. She doesn't know what that's like. She doesn't know what it's like to be victimized. I try to listen to everybody. It may take me a while to get through everything everybody says, particularly if it's extremely traumatic. And I am working on a number of projects right now. So I'm trying to fit in talking to everybody around their projects. That's not what you should do when you talk to people who've been through trauma. You need to acknowledge their trauma. And if you can help them, I don't know if it's possible to help everybody, but at least you can listen to everybody. Get to see her find a better way to earn a living. Yes, Prairie. I think her husband needs to go back to work too. No, Amanda. You asked you as a creator keep 100% of the super chat. You keep 50%. That's why I've never asked for super chats, because you're only going to keep 50%. If people want to give them to me, that's wonderful, but I'm not going to chase them, because I think it says a lot about a person when they start chasing that stuff. I think she lies about a lot of things. Yes, Michelle, she does. And it's all to get the dollars. Prairie, I don't think June is leaving Gilead after Mora, but that was one hell of a cliffhanger. Yeah, cliffhanger, it sure was. JJ, if she ever lied on me, I would sue her in a second. I would bankrupt her in attorney's fees just the sake of it. I can't stand how she lies on people. JJ, I've thought about it because she has lied on me a number of times. But I'm here in Costa Rica. In order to sue her, I would have to hire an attorney here. He would have to hire an attorney there. And it would be a big, expensive hassle. So I do have an attorney here. I'll talk to him about it. He explained how much of a hassle it is. The cheapest thing I can do is just get a restraining order on her here so she can't go within so many miles of me. She has not had the training. Yes, Atticus Finch, she has not had the training. I've spent a lot of time with her trying to get her up to speed at Pathos. And no, she has not had training. Pathos does not do journalism training. They figure when you come on, you've already had enough writing experience in various ways, various platforms, that they shouldn't have to spell it out to you if you're coming onto their platform. That was ultimately what did her in, was the chasing the clicks and coins and making stuff up, violating any kind of journalistic standards whatsoever. They finally had to take action. Oh, she could make just as much money writing in a nice way. JC, I think about that too. I think about if she had just stuck to the issues of having a child with a chronic illness, I think she could have made a mint. She could have made a mint on here. She could have. And she would have done a lot of good and demystified a lot of things. Everything from dealing with insurance to the daily challenges of having a feeding tube in. There's so many things she could have been good at that she would have helped so many people with. Yeah, YouTube, they take a lot of what you make. They take a tremendous amount. And I don't know how it plays out for taxes either. I know with Pathos, how I was able to take it as a business expense, everything, and write off the majority of my income. Went to a workshop called Writing the Other. It raises points on how to be nice in our writing to subjects that have experiences different than our own. Prairie. Yes, that's a good thing. I've been to a number of those things myself, and it's always good. JJ, same. If I were to sue her, I would hire a attorney right there in Minnesota. I wouldn't bother. And that's a shame because I do know a good entertainment one that handles these things, but he's out of Vegas. And that wouldn't do anybody any good. The workshops change your perspective for the better, I hope. Perry, that's awesome. There's other writing things you can do too. I've always found, I know this is going to sound crazy, I've always found NaNoWriMo to be helpful. You can go there and you can get a writing coach. They bring up all kinds of different things to think about it. I think one of the most useful fiction things that I've ever been told for writing fiction, because I sometimes do write fiction for fun. One of the most useful things was when Stephen King said, don't fall in love with your characters, torture them sometimes. You find yourself making your character Mary Sue, torture them. It makes them a lot more interesting. And it's just so boring when you fall in love with a character and you make it perfect. And I think that's what we're seeing with her. I think that she thinks she's some kind of heroine in her own story, some kind of Lifetime movie, and that she's perfect and everybody else around her is not so perfect. We're all flawed. She's flawed. We're flawed. Everybody is. Everybody makes mistakes. I don't know about you guys, but I make mistakes all the damn time. I try not to. I try to be factual about stuff that I do. I screw up routinely. And my husband over there doesn't always let me forget that. Sometimes he will point that out. Sometimes I'll point that out to him. He threw me a fright yesterday. We went to Nicoya to get his motorcycle because it had been worked on and sent through the yearly safety inspection Retive here. And his motorcycle is old. It's from 1977, maybe? Very old. So they have to do something with the idle to make it pass. So we got it there. But he gave me a little bit of a fright because we picked it up. We started going back home with a side ramble to KFC because we don't eat fast food except once in a blue moon because there's none where we live. And his bike died. Middle of the highway, a pretty major highway. His bike died and he couldn't get it restarted. And it was at a light where there's a Burger King, a KFC, and just all this stuff. So, Walmart subsidiary. So it's a pretty major intersection. There's a light. The motorcycle dies. We can't start it. People can't get around us. I'm right behind him. I've got the emergency blinkers on yesterday. And I had to follow him as he pushed the bike back about a mile to the shop. And I'm watching him sweating and his back of his neck turning red. And I'm thinking, you're almost 70. Please do not have a heart attack pushing your stupid motorcycle back to the shop. So when all that was over and we got it working again, I started to realize I started looking at my fears. And I think that's important too. Not only should we examine ourselves to make sure that we're not screwing up left and right without knowing it, because self-deception is deadly. I think sometimes we have to look at our fears. And I was asking myself, why was I so fearful in that situation? I said, well, I was afraid he was going to be hit by a car, number one. Number two, I was afraid for his health, that he would have a heart attack or a stroke pushing this bike, because it wasn't a light thing. I want to say a Yamaha 750, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't pay any attention to those things. I don't ride it. Oh, Prairie, I loved the KFC buffets, but I don't think it's coming back either. And we don't have it here. I wanted to see if they had Nashville Hot. I love Nashville Hot. And I haven't seen it since I got here. It's back in the States. They were advertising it in the States. I was watching a channel out of Miami the other day and just drooling. I was like, I want Nashville Hot. And I've made the spice from all these different recipes that people have come up with, and it's still not exactly the same. It's still not the same. And they didn't have it. Fear does do funny things to our brains and our bodies. And I was just laser focused on making sure I was 5 feet behind him with emergency blinkers on so that no one hit him, because that's what I was really worried about. I was worried he was going to get squashed by a car. And that's a valid fear here, because here in Costa Rica, people drive like maniacs. You think they drive like maniacs in the States? Okay, imagine the most maniac city you know in the States as far as drivers. Add in bicyclists, add in motorcyclists on teeny tiny little motorcycles, 100s, 150s that can't go more than 30 miles an hour. Add hundreds of those in. Add taxis in. Add in colectivos, or paratas, as we call them here, which are guys that are underground taxis and don't always take the greatest care of their car. They'll roll up with everything put together with Bondo and add those in. Then add all these other drivers in, and add in them doing like this and nobody paying any attention to the passing lane or anything else. Start praying. And these are paved roads. It gets worse when you move off-road to the very unpaved roads. Utah does have some crazy drivers, Prairie. They do. And I know they put MSG in the chicken, and I try not to eat them too often as a result, because I sometimes react to MSG. Not always, sometimes with the mast cell. And the same thing with various additives. But I'm going to say something really shocking. For me, having mast cell and reacting to chemicals, reacting to preservatives, reacting to just everything you can think of under the sun, when I travel and I can't figure out if the place is good to eat at or not, I eat at McDonald's. Why? The little tiny cheeseburgers, the meat is like 55% oatmeal. The buns are mostly cornstarch. And I know that I don't react to that. I can have those and do just fine. And traveling, sometimes it's a challenge here. And I was going to talk about this in another video, but I might as well talk about it here since I'm here already and it's working. Walmart chicken tenders in the deli. Yes, Kiki, I've had those a number of times now. Black market Uber. Yeah, and we have Uber here too in the bigger cities, because when I'm in San Jose, I'll park on the outskirts of town at the Holiday Inn and take an Uber in. I won't drive there. It's too crazy. And McDonald's is consistent, most definitely. Liz, I heard that too. I heard that McDonald's is getting a veggie burger. I don't know how true that is, but I wish Burger King here had the Impossible Burger. I'm going to have to try it the next time I'm in the States. I want to see what it's like. I have no problem eating a meatless substitute. I've done that a number of times when I've been reacting all over the place. Sometimes I do better with that. Okay, Costa Rica. People here will sell things just randomly. And my daughter freaked out one time because I got ceviche from a guy from the trunk of his car. He was selling ceviche in a parking lot from the trunk of his car. And one of the things I have learned here is most of the time when I've had food here, I've never had a bad experience with having street food. I never have, either from a cart, some guy selling it, people walking around with a big plastic container of locally made cheese. Yesterday, we were flagged down in the bank parking lot with a guy who wanted to sell us honey. And I bought a giant jar of raw honey for $10. And we do use a fair amount of honey here. The natural, unprocessed stuff with none of the chemicals in it. And that was a bargain. I was happy to get it. I have yet to have a bad experience with that. I find most Costa Ricans are really cleanly as far as their personal self and their homes and their kitchens. I've never had a bad meal here out of one of those places. Gotten all kinds of stuff. The honey was good, yes, because that was the first thing I did was take off the top, taste it, and say, yes, that's good, that's good. I almost pulled it out in KFC last night, but I figured they would be not happy with me, so I kept it to myself. So I've never had a bad meal here for that. Well, Perry, that's one thing that's interesting about here. We're not a third world country. This is a second world country. They're a second world country, and they're quickly moving towards being eventually a first world country. You will see Example, you might come along and there's a whole bunch of shaggy looking houses and they all have satellite dishes on top. People are getting smart TVs. I bought one here. Same as in the States. People here have smart TVs, smartphones, many of the technologies. Now, the support systems are still catching up. As you know, I sometimes have problems live streaming from here because I don't always have bandwidth. And that has to do with the fact that ESA, which is the state-run utilities, so the places that are backwaters, like I'm in my weird little triangle between two different jurisdictions, so I can only get the government stuff. They don't have fiber optics running to us. What's running to us from the ESA central location is copper wire, and it's ancient. So those are the things that they're trying to improve. We were trying to get on with Telecable, which is another company here, because they laid fiber optics in our neighborhood. I watched them. So I'm trying to switch to them because I know it will be better service. But that's one thing about Costa Rica. You cannot get mad at anybody because they do have their second world mentality that you say, hey, can you come out tomorrow, mañana? And they'll say, sure, mañana, mañana. Mañana might be in 3 weeks. And if you get mad, they don't understand that. Their culture is they came out. Maybe it took them 3 weeks. They had other stuff to do. But rather than tell you, hey, it's going to be 3 weeks, or I don't know when it would be, they'll say mañana and then show up in 3 weeks. And you're like, but I needed you 3 weeks ago. Well, why are you mad? I'm here now. That's the culture. Now, not everybody is like that. I do have some really good Tico people that I use for different things that aren't like that. They come out quickly. They tell you mañana. They mean mañana because they've dealt with Americans enough to know that you can't do the mañana with Americans or you just piss them all off really badly. I don't get mad with it anymore because I've been here close to 4 years, maybe a long time. And I said 3 years. I can't even remember anymore how long I've been here. So I don't get mad about that stuff because it's not not worth getting mad about. They'll show up when they'll show up. So Telecable has done the mañana, and I know they'll show up eventually and they'll fix everything and do what they're going to do. They're telling me that their service line runs right down the middle of my road. Therefore, my neighbors across the street, they have Telecable, but I don't know if they're going to get us Telecable. I'm hoping they do. I've been told they do, and then I've been told they don't. By them. Mañana tres semana. You are right. That's exactly right. Mañana. Does mañana work with moms? Unfortunately, not. And we're not on an island, but we are on island time. Costa Rica is a narrow little piece of land between Panama and Nicaragua. And you're just in laid back. It's a very laid back culture. And you can see that how everything is handled and nobody gets upset. The only time I've really seen honking and upset is in the big cities. Smaller towns like where I am, no. I'm on a dirt road. If you went past our big imposing gates and our big walls and things, you'd see we're on a dirt road. We're on a dirt road with everybody else. Down another dirt road, up by, and then you go to the secondary road. It's not very well paved, but it is paved. You need an island vacation? I would say come here, except for one thing. We're having so many Americans come now. It's mañana, mañana. It's vacation time here. So many Americans flooding in after they reopen the borders in November. But at the same time, right now, we've had almost 4,000 new COVID cases a day here. Our COVID rates had never gone beyond 1,600, and that's when they shut everything down. But now we're at a crazy amount, and it's due to the fact that they've reopened to tourists. There's a lot of new COVID restrictions put in place for those of us that live here, like today's Thursday. I can't drive my car. I have the wrong license plate number to drive on a Thursday or a Sunday. I'm only allowed to drive the rest of the week. If it gets worse, they'll do what they did before. They'll assign you one day of the week that you're allowed to go out to get groceries, and that'll be it. And get groceries or hey, Ashley. Yeah, mañana does mean tomorrow. I'm sorry to explain that. Amanda, that is an excellent idea. We actually have a really wonderful dentist here, even if he does start babbling sometimes about biofeedback and stuff that I'm just not interested in. But he's really good, and he charges very little compared to the States, very little. Um, when our daughter had to have braces as an adult, we got her down here and had him look at it because they were telling her that she needed to have not root canals, she needed to have crowns, that she needed to have like 5 or 6 crowns. He looked at her teeth and did a little work and said she doesn't need 5 or 6 crowns. They're full of it. They just want to make money off of her. So it was worth it to us to pay for her to come down here. They can be suck at the pickle. You are right. Americans can be very disrespectful to natives and local laws. And I have experienced that first time. The biggest laugh I've ever had from an American was one day I was at Witch's Rock, which is it's a hotel here. It's not a particularly fancy one, but it's a pretty decent one. And they own a couple different hotels. And they have a restaurant and a surf shop, and they're right there on Tamarindo Beach. I go there every now and then for breakfast because for like $11, you can get a plate like this and eat breakfast here. You don't need food for the rest of the day. It was during the papagayos. From January on, we get papagayos, which are these enormous winds that just whip across. And on the days that papagayos are hard, it's hard to be on the beach because if they're blowing a certain way, they pick up the sand and they just throw it. And you end up looking like you've been sandpapered when you get off the beach and you're stinging and it's like, ugh. So I was walking the beach that day. It was sprinkling a little bit and the papagayos were going big time. I came into Witch's Rock, decided to stop and get a Coke before I went back to the house. And somebody was complaining to the front desk that they'd paid a lot of money for their beach vacation and they wanted the hotel to stop the winds. They wanted the wind stopped. And I just laughed. It's like, how do you stop the wind? The wind is a natural thing. It's like here in Tamarindo, too. I frequently will see people swim on the edge of the estuary because in Costa Rica, all the beaches, you have an estuary. You have a river opening every now and then. And yeah, ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. You have estuaries, which are rivers opening into the beach because that's, how rivers work. They wind their way to the sea. They always do. So in Tamarindo, you have a large one that opens right there. And there's also a large wetlands. Between our house and Playa Grande, is if you were a crow when you were flying, it'd be 1.5 miles. I'm close enough to smell the sea breeze. But between me and that 1.5 miles is the Tamarindo Airport and also a large wetlands. So instead of being able to just drive the 1.5 miles or walk the 1.5 miles, I got to take this long way around the mountain, and it takes 15 minutes to get there in the car. It is what it is. But anyway, what's so funny about that, and I've done this before, I always laugh that this is the thing I get the biggest laugh out of doing in Tamarindo. There are crocodiles in that estuary. There's signs everywhere on Tamarindo Beach not to swim in the estuary area. Crocodiles usually won't come very far into the ocean. Sea water is not their thing. They'll usually stay in the estuary, but they do come out sometimes. And here's the sad thing. I've seen them take a number of dogs on the beach. They're swift. If it's a small dog, it's like run, snap, bite, and that dog is gone. I've seen that happen. I've told people, get your dog off that part of the beach. He's going to be eaten by, I had somebody I told that to, and the crocodile got the dog later. So Americans will swim in the estuary area. And I'm always like, you see that thing over there that looks like a garbage bag that's brownish, brackish? The garbage bag that's a little tiny bit of a, that is a crocodile. They don't usually bite people, but I would say about every 18 months to 2 years, we sometimes get a surfer or somebody gets a bite taken out of their leg. Nobody's been killed so far that I know of, but there have been a number of crocodile bites that I know of on people and animals. So it's poor pups, and they can get little kids. I've seen little kids swimming there because it seems more shallow and more less waves. It's not safe for anybody to swim there. So if I'm doing my beach walk, I walk down that way because very few people use that end of the beach. And there's shells galore, Shellmageddon, I like to call it. So I'm walking down there. Every time I see Americans swimming there, I point out where all the crocodiles I can see are, and I tell them, please don't swim here. You're going to be bitten by a crocodile. It happens here. And then they all get upset and say, why are crocodiles allowed near a tourist area? And I always say, that's their home. That's their natural habitat. Don't even get me started on that. That's their natural habitat. And the government of Costa Rica does monitor. If they do find there's a large crocodile population in a place where there shouldn't be, they'll remove a few of the guys and either put them at a rescue sanctuary or they'll relocate them in a place where there aren't that many crocodiles. It can get overwhelming. Landlocked here, but we do have saline wetlands, also a very large salt marsh in a neighboring state, no mountains in the immediate vicinity. Prairie, it's a really pretty part of the world where you are. Learn something new today. Oh yeah, crocs everywhere. Everywhere you have an estuary that opens the ocean. In fact, I would say that if you come to Costa Rica, one of the things I would say doing, but first I would haggle with these guys because most Americans don't understand you could haggle with the tour guides on how much you're going to pay. I would take a tour of the Jaco River sanctuary, the river estuary. There are guys that will give you a crocodile tour of the estuary instead of you standing on the bridge there at Jaco and looking at the crocs down below. I do see a lot of people do that. I've never seen any when I've gone through that particular bridge. I never see crocs there, but I know a lot of Americans have. We went on that estuary tour with the crocs, and it was one of the most interesting things I've done since I got here. I had to laugh because the guys running the tour had obviously been handling these crocs a long time because they had names for them. They named various crocs, and where they all looked the same to me, they said, oh, that's Angelina Jolie. That one's Bill Clinton. That one's Donald Trump. So they have all these crazy names based upon the temperaments of the crocodiles and some of the things, some of the characteristics, like Angelina Jolie had very beautiful green eyes. So they're hand feeding chickens to these crocs, which you're not supposed to do. That's against the law here, but they do it. And the croc guy was kissing Angelina Jolie on the head. I would not be kissing a crocodile. That's just me. And they tell you to keep your arms in when you're on the shore. It's actually very interesting. I enjoyed it. Amanda Page. Gators get in canals in Florida and they won't move them unless they are, I can't read my glasses of no matter where the canals are. That's how it is in Louisiana too. There are a lot of gators in Louisiana and they don't get moved. That's their natural habitat. That's where they live. The only time they even think about moving one, if they have one that is attacked people, then sometimes they will. But most of the time, it's like here. It's a live and let live situation. You have crocs. You have alligators. Hey, that's where they live. So and I've seen some big ones. There's one in the Tamarindo estuary that they say is a good 16 feet long. I've never seen him. I've seen the 5-footers, 6-footers. I've seen the little small ones. And in January, I've seen the itty bitty bitty ones once the eggs hatch. And you'll see hundreds of those, but then all of a sudden they'll disappear because they are perfect food for predators, apparently. Never smile at a crocodile. You were right, nitwit. um, so that's one of the nice things about living here is the respect for wildlife. And since COVID has happened and we've had less people here, I've seen more and more wildlife come back that has been missing from this area. Last year, this time, I was happy to hear we had a black-billed toucan with its weird call. It's very disjointed call. I've heard it again lately, and this is the first time was last year after living here a few years, not seeing or hearing from the black toucan. I finally started seeing them. They were eating some of the berries off the palm trees last year. I haven't seen them come around and do that yet, but the year is still young. So most of the wildlife here is not a problem. There are going to be some problem ones. One of the problems you have here, they have in Australia sometimes, is sometimes the big bullfrogs will find a way into your sewage system. That's the one thing here, you can't flush toilet paper because the sewage system cannot handle it. Everything is on septic tanks, and bullfrogs apparently have navigated going up and down the septic tank through the vent, through the thing that vents the gas off the septic tank. We had that experience here. I kept hearing weird splashes in the middle of the night. We'd get up and there was a frog in the toilet. Frog! So I kept flushing him away, going, off to your watery grave, click. He kept reappearing over and over and over again until one day he ended up in the shower with my husband, who started screaming about the frog being in there with him, jumping around. So basically, we had to relocate him to another lot a long ways away. And yeah, I hate frogs too. I'm not a big frog fan. I find them in the pool every now and then and just pull them out with a net and throw them out. So those are the kind of everyday situations you're going to encounter here. You're going to find, the other day I posted pictures on my Facebook. I'm going to have to start posting them on my Twitter and my Costa Rican blog. Pictures of a major traffic jam on the highway. It was cattle. They had a ton of cattle. They were moving from field A to field B, and they shut down the entire highway to do so. And this is not an uncommon occurrence. This has happened a fair amount of times. Did I wake you up? I'm sorry.
It's after 10. I'm late.
Oh my gosh, I forgot you are late. You got your men's group. I forgot we're on a Thursday. He's got men's group at the church. So he's running off for that. But I had not kept track of the time. I've talked the longest I think I've ever talked. Michelle, you get those too? You get those frogs in the bathtub? It's kind of discombobulating if you aren't expecting it. For me, it was kind of weird because it was happening around 1 a.m. I would hear the splashing, splash, 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 and the frog would be in the toilet just over and over. I was like, why is there a frog in the toilet? And my poor mother, she called one day, and I went to get the dustpan. I was talking to her. I was sweeping, and I saw a snake on the dustpan go behind the refrigerator, and told her, I said, there's a snake, a little teeny tiny little danger noodle, teeny tiny one. And she was kind of freaked out, said, oh no, snakes. I just said, Stinky will get him, my cat. He'll get him. Stinky thinks he's the mighty hunter. And if it's a little tiny thing, he'll get it. Sure enough, exactly the next day I came along. In the kitchen, Stinky was paying big attention to something by the baseboards. And I took a look, and it was a little snake, a little tiny danger noodle. He was trying to get him. So I just swept him into the dustpan and held him down with a broom and took him outside. Stinky followed me, and then Stinky proceeded to patrol the patrol the patio to make sure the snake did not come back. I kind of laughed at that, watching him march along looking for a snake. He can be so funny. Oh, Amanda, that's good. That was actually pretty interesting. I'd never seen a teeny tiny itty bitty little baby snake before. I've seen them twice here now, near the house. This year I had no scorpions. I was really happy about that. In dry season, you can get scorpions come in and end up in some strange places, and they'll end up in your laundry if you're not careful. We had that happen. My husband was I guess bitten by the scorpion or stung or whatever it is they do. And cats are the best. He keeps the scorpions, the little tiny snakes, in line. Every now and then he'll bring a lizard in that he's killed and stick it either by my desk or my husband's desk or in my sewing room by my sewing machine, wanting us to praise him for his lizard hunting skills. He used to go after the huge iguanas that we have here. And that's another thing I have to put a picture up of so you guys can see. We have a huge iguana that lives on the property he's beautiful. He's got orange spikes and red and gold and gray and black on him. He is beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful iguana. He's probably 5 feet long at least. And I see him on a regular basis. Stinky started fooling with him and coming back with iguana bites all over his head. And I said, stop fooling with that guy. You got to stop fooling with him. And Stinky used to stink. JC, we first got him, he was a little stray kitten. He stunk so bad, no matter what we did. It took him a while to get over his various adventures until he started smelling sweet again. So we called him that. It just stuck. So Stinky was fooling with this giant 5-foot iguana. I looked out the kitchen window one day because if you looked at my video where I walked through my backyard, one of the nice things about this house is the picture windows. I'm sitting in front of a 15-foot picture window. There's a matching one in the kitchen. The living room is half doors that open, so you can actually pull back the doors, and the living room becomes part of the covered patio. So I'm walking into the kitchen, as usual, to do dishes or whatever, and I look out the window, and I see Stinky up the starfruit tree, about 20 feet up, not an insignificant amount, and up on a smaller branch. And I'm going, Stinky! I ran outside and was like, Stinky, what are you doing up there? Well, he came down when I started calling him. And I looked around, and he was making a giant circle because the 5-foot iguana was there. And the iguana was in full show mode, where it's like showing his thing. He was in display. He was showing and bobbing his head, which usually means I'm the biggest, baddest guy on the planet. Acknowledge me or die. So Stinky made a huge circle around him. And then Stinky went into cat submission mode. I laughed because Stinky just laid down and submitted to him. And they were having a standoff about who was the biggest and baddest. And Stinky had to admit he was the biggest and the baddest. So I grabbed Stinky and pulled him in, and the iguana went on about his business. But I've seen that iguana fight off challenges to his territory here a number of times from other iguanas who ended up slinking off in shame. This is his yard. Grabbed and beheaded in the yard and freaked me out because I was not expecting them to do that. That they made a soup out of. So, Michelle, you had an iguana? My daughter had one, and my oldest, and she never took care of it quite as well as I thought she should. So I ended up feeding him quite a bit and putting water in his cage. And it was a pretty interesting critter. He finally figured out that I was the source of food and water, and he and I got along just fine. I could pet him. I could take him out of the cage. He was pretty tame with me, but it's not a pet I would have run out and bought for myself at all. Michelle, sometimes not here because I'm not really on top of a wet area here. But when we first moved to Tamarindo, we lived in a house called, I forgot the name of it exactly, but it works out to be Spanish for nest of sparrows. Every house on that property had a name like that. The nest of the sparrows. I loved that house. We rented it. The landlords were German. They had a big house up the hill. Theirs was the house of wood, and it was completely made of wood. It's a gorgeous house. Swimming pool, 5 cabinas. Beautiful piece of property. They had it for sale. But we ended up moving because they would never do the proper maintenance on the house. And what happened was the electrical switch in the, I guess, out by the street went bad. We had that happen in our house in Culpeper. So I knew that's what it was when half the electricity in the house stopped working. And they didn't want to pay to have it fixed. We moved out as a result. That was one of the reasons they would not fix this thing. And there were times the microwave didn't work. There were days when the refrigerator died and I had to pull everything out and use ice. It turned into a real hassle, but I love that house. And there was some kind of wetlands or wet area near us, because sometimes you would hear the frogs so loud at night, you would not believe the volume on them and the weird sounds. One day I walked outside and there was a frog on our patio that was like this big. I had never seen such a big thing before. So that was pretty cool. That's one of the things I absolutely love here. I love how natural everything is. I love the slow pace of life. I love how they take care of the natural critters that live here. They have as much right to be here as us. I love the care that is taking to make sure that everything stays pretty natural. Our last gardener was pretty awesome because he pointed out to me things I had growing in my yard that were from bird droppings that were medicinal plants and herbs and things. And I ended up keeping quite a few of them instead of just mowing right over them. And so that was pretty interesting overall. And I have to confess, I have something that I could be arrested for here, but I doubt they will ever get around to it. Take notes, Katie Joy, and call Immigrazione. I have a contraband garden. I have a bunch of gardening frames. I've always gardened. I've always grown vegetables and fruits and things. We have a full orchard on the property. We get all kinds of fruits. We get bananas, mangoes, papayas, star fruit. I did have a couple of trees that were local fruits that they don't sell in America that I had to take down because they weren't healthy. I've got several grapefruit trees, lime. I have a lime tree. I have a lemon tree, and we have almonds. We have several almond trees that produce large amounts of almonds every year. So those are all good. We eat those things. And we get so many, we give them away frequently. Frequently, we make a run. We get a huge amount of fruits to the food bank. And I'm going to probably start doing that when I get a lot of vegetables, because I'm set up now with large vegetable frames they put up for me because I don't walk well anymore. I got to use my cane. So I have to shift how I garden a little bit. And that's fine. I mean, it is what it is. But my contraband garden, my illegal garden, I have American sweet potatoes instead of Costa Rican camote, because camote here are what we would call marguerite sweet potatoes in the States. They're white, they're sugary, they're pretty tasteless, I think. They remind me if you took a spoonful of white sugar and poured it on a potato, and it's not good. I have American zucchini. They have a zucchini here. It's very different. The taste is not the same. So I just grew an American zucchini plant. I have got, I've got not just that, I've got American spinach, because the spinach here is bush and tree spinach. It's very bitter. So I've got American spinach. I have a special kind of American carrots I like that are multicolored. I've got those growing in there. I've got some rare tomatoes. They're there. And we have American corn, because you cannot get American corn here except if you run to the automercado and you buy the frozen green giant niblets on the little. And that's about the closest you can get. The corn they sell here for cooking, corn on the cob, is feed corn. like you would give an animal, and it's not good. It's not sweet. I've tried it all kinds of ways. I even dressed it up as Mexican street corn, which I absolutely love, and it's still not good, even as a Mexican street corn. So I'm growing those. That's awesome for American Samoa. Oh, let her call Homeland Security on me. What are they going to do? They're going to tear up my sweet potato patch. Um, that's what's funny. So I call that my contraband vegetable patch because all of those things, I brought the seeds here and I'm not selling it around. I'm not the only one. Almost everybody who's American here who gardens does this because if you like certain kinds of vegetables, I grow Costa Rican vegetables too, by the way. So it's not just my snobbery. I've got to have American vegetables. There's just a few American vegetables I like. And I always go to their version of Costco here, which is Price Smart, and get a 3-pound bag of frozen blueberries because if you don't do that, blueberries, a little tiny pint of blueberries can be $7 or $8 if you can find it. And I buy most of my fruits and vegetables from the fruit stand down here called My Fruit Test, which is awesome. They have all kinds of stuff. They even have blueberries. But I don't like paying gringo prices for those things, so I make sure I have a giant frozen blueberry. Yeah, so there's that. So that's really it. That's life here. And KJ, call Homeland Security, call the Department of Health, call whoever you want on me because you're not going to find anybody in any of those departments here that speaks English. You're going to be rattling on. They're going to be going, can't habla español. And I know that KJ loves to say that she speaks Spanish fluently, but I don't believe that. I just don't get that. Maybe she did when she was in college. When I was in college, I spoke German fluently, and I no longer do. And it's been a mess for me here because somebody will talk to me in Spanish, and I will answer them in German. German I didn't even know that was in there. I will let you know, Prairie. I don't think she will because it's just such a stupid minor thing. And here's the thing with the police here. They overlook a lot. Like I said, I don't get medical marijuana here. I used to be able to get medical marijuana in the States. They put me on it at Johns Hopkins for my asthma. If I need medical marijuana, if I need an edible, I go to the Thursday night market. There's somebody there that sells weed brownies, and it's clear that's what it is. It says it right on the sign. Marijuana is 100% illegal here. Do you think the policia here pay any attention to that? Heck no. They don't fool with her at all. Anytime you walk on the beach here or down the street, you'll run across at least one person trying to sell you weed and or cocaine. They turn a blind eye to drugs. They turn a blind eye to a lot of stuff if you're here as a gringo with money. And that's privilege. That's the kind of white privilege that really sucks, but it's actually pretty good if you can experience it every now and then. Normally, but there it is. It must be stored in the same area of the brain, Prairie, because it comes out, and sometimes if it's really, yeah, anything that is illegal here is readily available. And even if it's legal, people will still, because that's another thing that's interesting here. It's a very Catholic, very patriarchal society, but prostitution is legal and everywhere. There aren't very many legal houses of ill repute. I have one not far from my house. But I always laugh when I see it. Every time I drive by, I just laugh. I feel bad for the poor girls that live there, except that I will say that here, the girls are inspected regularly and they're taken care of. It's almost all the girls that are prostitutes here. This is a sad thing. They're from either Nicaragua or El Salvador or some very poor areas of other countries. It's the only thing they can do that makes a lot of money they can send back to their villages where they're from. it's just kind of sad. It's all kinds of sad that they have to do that. But I find it absolutely fascinating that here is this tightly buttoned up society, yet prostitution is legal, and they turn a blind eye to drugs. I'm just still trying to figure that out. Alcohol is prevalent here, like in every other Catholic-based society I've ever lived in, including the one I grew up in. They have this rum here called Guaro that's very popular. I like chili Guaro shots myself. Amanda, there's some Catholic churches here. The one in Tamarindo sucks. It's not very good, and I can't even figure out when the time is, and it's never open. When we were in Copiague, they had the most beautiful Catholic church I've ever seen. It was a couple of 100 years old. It was made out of wood. It had all kinds of antique books in it. It had these bizarre carved statues that were painted. It was gorgeous. And then after we'd been there about 6 or 8 weeks, it burned to the ground. And since we were up in the mountains in a very remote community, it took 45 minutes for the fire department to get there. And by the time they got there, it was smoldering ashes. And that was really a shame. There is a huge old Catholic church that is the oldest church in all of Costa Rica, in Nicoya, where I was yesterday, which is not far at all. It's about maybe a 90-minute drive. They have an old one there. There's some older ones in places in around San Jose. When we were in Copiague de Dota, we were about an hour from San Jose. The Central Valley, there's a lot of just very ancient things like that. One of the malls, a mall in Cartago, is built around some ruins from I think almost back to Roman times. They actually have some walls that go way, way back that they preserved. And I'm glad to see that. I would like to see more and more of that sort of thing preserved. Oh my God, I have spoken an hour and 17 minutes. Volga German Catholic. That's interesting, Prairie. And I'm not surprised it has the highest per capita beer consumption. Like I said, I grew up in South Louisiana with Catholics, and my family was all Catholic, and everybody drank. Even little kids, they give you a little bit when you were a kid. I think I had my first beer when I was like 2. And from then on, and I drank by the time I was 14, and the family never said a thing. It was just a thing. It's just the culture down there. And I'm learning rapidly it's Catholic culture. Catholic culture, there's more alcohol flowing than in the Baptist areas or the areas where the IFB or the other Protestant religions. I've not seen anywhere that there's that much drinking in a Protestant area except for in Germany. The Protestants there, they love their beer. And I can't believe how long I've been talking. I got to get off. I got to get off and do my day. I've got laundry to wash and fold. I've got a cat that I have to see about getting to the vet today, and a bunch of other things. So y'all have a good day. I can't believe I started out ranting about KJ being so wrong again about something that is fundamental in Quiverfull, and ended up talking about the beauty of Costa Rica yet again. Okay, love you guys. See you later.